Hello. So today I have the pleasure of hosting Piyush on this channel. So Piyush has been a friend. He is a IIM Ahmedabad alum, and so I requested him that he would take us through his decade of exciting journey, which will be quite useful for viewers on this channel. So welcome, Piyush. So give us
Hey
a brief
Anurag,
of yourself before we start off with the questions.
sure. Thanks for having me here, Anurag. We've known each other for a long time, right? Working together
Yeah.
for the alumni chapter as well. So it's great to be here, talk to you. Born and brought up in Calcutta, just like you. Hold that city close to my heart. Did my schooling in Don Bosco, and then actually in school I was never a really good student actually. So I was a state level basketball player, and ended up at Bhawanipur Education Society College, or Bhagu for short, which not a lot of people in my batch believe that I am. But when I finally started taking my sports seriously as a professional, realized you get around 300 rupees a match plus lunch. So not really meeting my career aspirations. Decided that in India basketball does not really have a very high scope. And if I was honest with myself, I probably did not have the kind of talent required to make it internationally, or sort of try that sport in some international arenas, as some breakout players are now doing from India. So decided to start taking my career a little more seriously in terms of the education. I come from a business family. Always was sort of the black sheep of the family, because apart from me, everyone else, including my younger brother who passed out of IIM Kozhikode, works in the business family. So decided to move out, try and do something on my own. I actually gave CAT two times. The first time I gave CAT, I had a 97 percentile, but my quants was sub 60. So that was one area where I knew I had to work hard. And my parents were like, you've never been a good student, so why are you like wasting your time? So one of my brothers actually made me write down the name of institutes, that I would get through. Otherwise, I would leave all this foolishness and start enjoying the family business. So that's how it was. Fortunately enough, second time I gave CAT, worked really hard on my con. So my English has always been brilliant because I just read a lot. I mean, even now, Anurag, if you know, we keep talking about the kind of books I read. I still read at least 50 books a year. So, and at that point in time, I used to read at least a book a day. So maybe sometimes more. So I've always been reading a lot, and that helped me with my verbals. But maths was a weak area, something that I knew always, but worked very hard on it for a year. Thankfully, the next time I gave CAT, I had a 99.8 plus with a 90.8 in maths, which is just about above the cutoff needed for quant. So, fortunately enough, that happened. Luckily, got through to IMA. 2 years of really, really a lot of learning, more outside the class than inside actually, because as you know, working with sort of brilliant people from different regions, and a lot of us who are from a commerce background, actually this is the first time we actually step out of home, right? So a lot of learning, outside the class as well. And then this was 2008. About the worst time for a CFA BCom grad who had taken all his courses in finance and sort of passed out. I did my summer internship at Merrill, but by the time I passed out, there was no Merrill. There was Bank of America. So did not get my PPO. But since then, it's been a little more than 10 years. We actually had a 10th year reunion at IMA last year. So end of last year. So it's been a little more than 10 years, almost 11 years actually now. Been a very up and down journey, but great learning experience as well.
Uh, the one question that goes is that in terms of the MBA, you've already told that you wanted to diversify away from basketball. Today, there is a lot of talk around work experience prior to your MBA. You did it straight after your BCom. So, what are your thoughts on that in terms
So
of
there are two.
would work ex
So
help?
honestly, Anurag, two ways to think about it. If you ask me honestly, and this is something that a lot of people ask, and a lot of people say also, if I had some experience before I did MBA, it would have been really good for me, and I should have gotten that experience and come to do my MBA. I can understand the logic for it, because obviously the kind of contribution you do in class, how much you get out of the MBA is definitely much more. But if you were to be honest, for someone with my background, what kind of work experience would I have gotten if I had sort of passed out? And even all the experience that a lot of engineers have, right? So if after engineering you're going and doing some coding at Infi or TCS, or Wipro. Or like me from Bhawanipur, the best job I could have gotten was cashier at Westside, right? That was the kind of job placement that used to happen in Bhawanipur. Not a lot of learning I would have gotten out of my job. So today the things are a lot different. Today for guys passing out of IITs, it's just sort of plethora of opportunities, whether that's startups, whether that's finance, with lots of investment banking moving down the supply chain and hiring very aggressively from IITs. Even for commerce graduates, at least from good colleges like Xavier's and probably SRCC and some of the DU colleges, there are lots of opportunities today when you talk about getting some work ex. But 10 years back, especially from the background and college I came from, I don't think I would have had those opportunities. So it's a very horses for courses kind of a decision that you make. You have to sort of hold what makes sense for you at that point in time. If you can get the kind of experience that adds value, right? Because just working is not. I keep telling this to people, right? I mean, you could have a 10-year experience, or you could be doing, you could have a 1-year experience 10 times over because
Ideally,
you're doing the same thing.
that's right.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. So then you graduated in the year 2008, the year of the Lehman Brothers and the global financial meltdown. So how did that actually impact you and your batchmates?
I've actually been writing about this in the last few weeks, and then I'll share with you when I actually complete that. But to be honest, 1 year out of campus, I was fired from my first job. That was Anand Rathi. So 1 year out of campus, I was without a job. There were no jobs left in investment banking at that point in time. People were getting fired left, right, and center. I could not find a job for the next 8 months. I actually took up a small time stint for 6 months at a company called Century Metal Recycling, which used to be a forger of aluminium. So I used to head purchase for them and stay out of the factory itself in Faridabad. So yeah, I mean, there were some dark times. But if I look back at it now, right, I mean, in a way, probably, we have this saying, whatever happens, happens for the best. Because if you
Correct.
ask me honestly, at the time when I was at Anand Rathi, right, which was the first investment banking job I did out of campus, I was probably in a job I did not love and in an organization that did not have the kind of culture that really excited me, right? That's not to say that the organization was bad, it's just that it did not align with the cultures I had. And so probably moving out of the job was in a way something that was good for me, because if you look at it, it was a tough 8, 9, 10 months. But from there on, the kind of roles I have done have been the roles that have really set me up for the kind of success that I've seen later in my life, or whatever limited success I've seen later.
For you, nowadays, there's a lot of talk around B schools being just glorified placement agencies. So for in
Yeah.
your case, the kind of placement that IIM Ahmedabad gave you didn't last for long. So how was that as a feeling? It would have been, parents would have been, gosh, what has this happened, and etc.
Sir, first of all, I mean, I have to be very honest. I think from my parents' point of view, there was always so much support, right? So I mean, my dad was probably the happiest guy. अच्छा है, अब आजा धंधे पे लग जा types. uh, and even my would-be wife, right? I think the support was enormous. Like, when I started working at Century Metal Recycling, I just got married after that. So and we'd been dating each other for 5 years before that. So I mean, the kind of support from the support system was brilliant. Um, if you look at it, right, that question where setting it up, I think anything in life, such as a name or a brand, what it does, it definitely opens doors for you, right? It gives you certain opportunities, but that's all it does. I think once the door is open, you have to prove yourself in that opportunity. So whether you're from IIM or from, so if you're from IIM compared to, say, I don't know, an IMT or a
Big
ICFI,
five.
obviously, yeah. So doors open much faster. Absolutely, I agree. But once you're there, right, just like anyone else, you have to perform as well, because if you don't, right, you're actually the first head to move. I mean, if you look at it in larger companies, who do you fire first? The guys with the highest salaries. So
Correct.
from a practical point of view, once you're there, you have to prove yourself. Otherwise, all that branding does not help.
That's right, because I kind of talk to a lot of youngsters. So nowadays the concept of MBA has been what is the course fee and what is the exit placement salary. So I tell them that it's about learning, because you have to as a person deliver on the corporate front.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that whole concept of IMT Ghaziabad means X salary and symbiosis means why salary is not really what one should
And
look
so, I mean, I get where the youngsters are coming from, right? Because the starting salary absolutely has a value in itself. Because eventually we consciously or unconsciously measure ourselves against a monetary value rather than the learning value that we are getting, and that only comes with time. But looking back at life, and I've been to campuses talking to young students, and two things that really stand out. One is, if you look at my career, right, and when I passed out and what I thought I wanted to do in life, I did that for 1 year and I've never gone back to that field. And if you and then if you've seen the field that I worked for the last 5 years, those companies did not exist when I passed out of campus. So it's very hard to have a very strong view of where you want to go. I think the better way of looking at your career is what are the skills and learnings you're picking up, whether that's on the job or on campus. And the second big thing, honestly, is that a job is so. If you set yourself the targets, if you let other people set targets for you, like for example, I know if I get to finance, I'll get a 20 lakh. Someone else is setting that target for you. In life, what I've realized is, you let other people set targets for you, you can never outperform yourself because you are living by some other people's targets. So that is something that I've tried to tell a lot of people. I think there's a change in the mentality as well. 10 years back when we were on campus and people used to ask us, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Most of the answers used to be around, in a strategic role, doing some valuable work and stuff like that. I still remember how we used to practice those answers. And if you ask a lot of people today, they're very clear they want to do something on their own, right? I mean, majority of the people that I have gone back and interviewed on campus, and I go there almost every year now, have told me that they want to do something on their own sometime in the near future. So I think that mentality is changing. I think people are understanding they need to chase their own dreams. It's just, I still get where you're coming from when it comes to the campus place.
So take us to the initial part of your career post Anand Rathi, the non-unicorn part, Century Metal, Indus, Fortis. These are conventional, non-conventional roles for a typical finance guy who's taken all finance majors. So, what have been your exciting moments there?
Well, the good thing that I realized, so like I said, when I look back at it, I think it was good because eventually I found myself in roles that were the roles that I enjoy doing, right? And so what the one big factor for me has been and the other big feature that I said, for me, life is a lot about trajectory, okay? And so one big factor for all of those roles has been my trajectory has been very steep once I've been in those roles. So the good thing about the exciting thing for me has been very early in most of those roles, I've been able to get in, sort of prove myself to targets that I have put, which are usually much steeper than what the companies put in front of me. So, for example, when I joined Indus, right, and then core telecom company, uh, and I joined as a manager in a circle which was not a very large circle, which was Calcutta, right. It took me around 11 months to get myself to a role where I was directly working with the CEO of a company that is one of the largest companies in India. A lot of people have not heard about Indus, but as a joint venture between Airtel, Vodafone, and Idea, one of the largest companies in India in terms of asset base. And I was directly working with the CEO on national projects and sort of leading teams where the guys who I were leading were people with 25 years of experience and circle CEOs. So very steep trajectory, right? Similarly, I mean, I know you talked about the earlier roles, but all the other roles, the one thing has been the steep trajectory. So Uber, when I joined, uh, within five within 5 months, I was the bar raiser globally, which is you're held up as an example for the rest of the company, where sort of you are among the top 2% of the employees globally, and you have a veto power over any new senior hires in the company in India.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Similarly, when I went to Ola, I actually joined as a senior manager. Within 9 months, I moved from, I joined as a manager. So within 9 months, I moved from manager to senior manager to director. So that I was actually holding a director role there within 9 months. So I joined as head for East India, and within 9 months, I was handling 62 cities
Tier three
across
cities.
tier
So I
cities. So,
remember we had once hosted Professor Arvind Sai at some alumni meeting, and
yeah,
post that you said I have a call with Bhavesh at 10. It will
yeah,
start at 10 or 10:30, and I was like, who is Bhavesh?
yeah,
So you said he's the owner of Ola, and
yeah,
I said, oh, you interact directly with Bhavesh Agarwal, and that has been the kind of work you could do. So I
yeah.
think, but then, huh?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, the initial part you would have been a bit jittery, no, about joining a startup which has not found.
Fortunately, I was not, because, like I said, having the knocks that I heard earlier in my career made me very robust in terms of the kind of decisions I could take and the kind of risk I could take in my
Yeah.
career. So I realized very early on, instead of forcing myself to do something because the crowd tells me that is the right thing to do, right? Go to IMA, get an investment banking job, and you're made for life is what the typical commerce graduate mantra is, right? And I realized very early that is not what I enjoyed doing. So why am I forcing myself to do it? The problem with us in life is this is something that comes very early for someone in India and in our culture, because when you are in school, you'll keep hearing, अभी पढ़ ले बाद में ठीक हो जाएगा. So अभी 10 में पढ़ ले, your life is made. Then 12 में अच्छे मार्क्स ले जा, your life is made. Get into a good college, your life is made. Get into a good MBA college, your life is made. We keep hearing that, and that sort of becomes almost inculcated. Your life will never get made till you keep hearing what other people are telling you. Your life should be like.
Trust me, investment banking, I have seen so many investment bankers getting stressed out and completely burnt out in 4 or 5 years. And
Yeah.
that's the end of the career. They are doing, so that's
Yes,
there.
it's up to you, right? I mean, you have to enjoy what you're doing, otherwise you'll never be at the top of your profession. You could still do it. It could still monetarily, sort of reward you. But eventually, 10 years down the line, monetary reward is not what you work for. What you work for are two major things, right? Satisfaction in your job and the kind of independence you have in your role. Other than that, monetary is sort of like a baseline. Itna mujhe chahiye, right? I mean, below this is not something I can work at. But as long as that is satisfied, what makes you enjoy your role are those two things.
So in a unicorns, because initially it was kind of starting from an app where people would say, okay, an app will make a cab come to my home. So that would have been quite a struggle in the initial phases. And you were a person who would have interacted directly with a Bhavesh Agarwal of sorts. So how was it on the work-life balance, traveling, tier 3 cities, managing so much?
There are two or three things, right? One is absolutely when you say I used to talk directly to Bhavesh, absolutely. But also when I launched Uber in Calcutta, the first 1,000 drivers I trained myself.
Oh,
So in a unicorn, what happens is you see both ends of the spectrum. So which is why your growth is so steep, right? A, you have to be in touch with the absolute core of the business, which at the end of it is the unit level, right? Which is either the driver, if you talk of Zomato, the restaurant, or the customer, right? You have to be there at the core level. What does happen at unicorns is the hierarchy almost does not exist, right? As long as you're doing good work and you're doing important work which is important for the all, you work directly with the founder, because unlike a professional who's running a company, a founder will be involved in every aspect of the business. Whether that's a Bhavesh, whether that's a Dipinder at Zomato. I've actually even interacted with Travis, who used to manage 50 countries in Uber, right? So you get to interact with all of these guys because, for example, India used to be a major destination for Uber, where sort of they wanted to succeed, and Calcutta was the fastest growing market for Uber internationally. So you get to interact with senior management as well, as long as you're doing good, important strategic work. Which is why, when I took that decision, it was very easy for me, because looking at the kind of work I was doing, even working with a CEO, it was limited. Whereas in something like an Ola, I could actually almost independently run the business like a owner.
okay. And 2,500 people, you write on your LinkedIn profile that you manage 2,500 people at Zomato. I mean, a lot of them
Yeah.
would have been senior in age to you, just like you said in Indus also, there were people 25 years veterans.
In Zomato, not so much, because startups tend to be very, very
Yeah, yeah.
young in nature. So my team would actually have an average age of 23, 24, because a lot of them would be developers or customer support. But it's just the trajectory, like I told you, right? When I started with Uber, we started with a 4-member team in Calcutta when we launched, right? We expanded to about 8 people. I went to Ola, where I was handling a team of about 70, and over my 2 years there, by the end I left, when I was managing all of tier 3 plus Calcutta, my team was about 500 people. And then when I moved to Zomato, it was 2,500 people. So the trajectory itself was very steep in those 5 or 6 years.
This is something which is a dream for a lot of individuals. And I'm glad that.
It's also a huge responsibility. When you're managing 3,000 people, and most of the time it's impossible to remember the names of 3,000 people, right? But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you for those 3,000 people. So yes, it's a dream in terms of the number, but more than that, it's a huge responsibility when you have so many people looking up to you and you are responsible for.
And now this $100 million fund, VC fund, Tomorrow Capital. So tell us more about this VC industry. What's the typical life in the day of a venture capital, etc. So when you look at an investment, what do you do?
Sure. So I'll start with a story, right? Because I think how venture capital or how startup world works is very peculiar in a way. So do you know that the wheel was actually invented twice? So wheel was actually invented twice in the world, right? Wheel is one of the biggest inventions of mankind, right?
Yeah,
We believe it changed the way civilization works. The first time wheel was invented was in Mesopotamia, right? Which
yeah,
was in around 2500, 3500 to 2500 BC. It changed the way sort of the world's work, right? People could move further. We could actually create roads and basically started civilization up in a way, right? Which is why Mesopotamia is called the cradle of civilization.
that's right.
And that was one way to look at it, right? The other was wheel was invented around 1000 BC in Mexico, and obviously Mesopotamia and Mexico could not connect at that time because there was no land bridge between those two, and we had no way of traveling so far. But in Mexico, the wheel never amounted to anything than a toy. They could just put it on toys, and you know why that made a difference? The major difference was that there were no horses in Mexico, and there were no other cattle that people could attach wheels to. So the difference between the two was the kind of opportunity that a catalyst gave, right? Which is what we look at ourselves in venture capital. So when we talk about venture capital, especially our fund, when our thesis comes, we believe we are the catalyst to a good opportunity. So the good thing about venture capital is every day we meet tens of thousands of people. Every year we meet tens of hundreds of people with brilliant ideas, and you're learning something new every day. And overall, hopefully, over a period of a year, you get an opportunity to partner with 3, 4 such people to make their dreams a reality. That is what we do. Now, when it comes to the more practical aspect of how we look at businesses, so there are more or less, if you look at it, 3 to 4 large pieces that we look at when we judge a business, right? Or when we are looking to invest, how we look at businesses. So the first thing that we look at actually is the founder. So we need to have a lot of comfort in the founder, and a lot of comfort that is A, scalable, and B, someone we can work with, because we are a very operationally heavy startup. The second, we look at the solution that the business is trying to provide, right? And is it a new solution? Is it something absolutely new? Is it solving a pain point that is big enough for people to actually appreciate it? The third thing we look at is, of course, the size of the opportunity. So one is whether the opportunity is good enough, but also if it's good, how big is the opportunity? So you could be solving a problem that's really good, but affects only 10 people. In which case, it's not scalable and not something that we would be able to do because we are a consumer startup, consumer venture capital. So we look at opportunities that are actually huge and scalable. And the last thing that we look at is sort of our fund fitment. So is it B2C? Does it fall into the 1 to 3 million bracket in terms of the investment needed? Is it something that and does not fall under any of the categories that we do not invest in? So, for example, as a fund, we do not invest in any businesses that has to deal with alcohol or non-veg. So those are the 4 major things that we look at when we are trying to invest in a business.
So and what is your typical day in office? As in, there are a lot of deal decks. Which
So
decks?
I'll talk about a typical week because a day can change, right? I mean, depending on what you have on that day. But in a typical week, we do at least 10 to 15 calls or meetings with founders who have businesses. So typically half an hour to 45 minutes per call. So that's a large part of my day of my week. We also spend another 15 to 20 hours just evaluating a lot of opportunities that are with us. So we talk to a founder, we like that business a lot. So then it gets to the next level, which is evaluation. So we start looking at the industry, at this opportunity. Maybe look at the financials of the business, look at other competitors. What does the size of industry look like? Sort of try and create our thesis of the business and the industry. And then a lot of our business actually goes towards our portfolio companies. So we spend a lot of time supporting our portfolio companies. So unlike a lot of financial investors, we are not just a financial sort of capital infusion business. We actually spend a lot of time and give a lot of support in helping the companies grow. So, most of our principals spend 3 to 4 days with the portfolio companies in a week rather than out of our office. So that's
That's
how,
good. Because it's
yeah,
not just hot money. Because, for example, there are a lot of real estate developers who might give you paychecks as a
yeah,
startup, but
yeah.
there's no point because unless that hand holding is done, that hot money will get vanished in a few
Yeah. So
months.
also depends on the founder. There are founders who are not interested in investor who will be very actively involved. So which is why I said the founder check for us is very important. But yeah, I mean, we are very operationally heavy. We say that upfront. In fact, because we are so operationally heavy, we look at a substantial minority when it comes to investment. So we do not invest wherever we have less than 25% stake.
So that you
So
have
we
a
need a
say over
minimum of,
decision making.
exactly. Yeah.
And for youngsters, like now you are in that, you've been at, seen there. This VCP industry is kind of, very closed industry because very limited number of people. So
Yeah.
what are the entry barriers in terms of academic qualifications, connections, etc.?
So there are two typical ways of getting into VC, right? One is that one is going to a good institute and being in the top half of your class, especially in terms of finance, and you get picked off campus, right? So a lot of in your batch and mine, there would be a lot of people. So most of the people who would have joined a PE or VC would be in the top 10 in the batch, typically, right? So that's one way to do it. The other way to do VC is have very strong experience of either building a business, so as a founder, or in startups in operational roles. So VCs typically therefore look for two kind of people. So one is the investing side of the business, so people who are very sort of comfortable with financial modeling, can do complex modeling and complex business models, who typically come with your sort of a financial, either come from other VCs or financial background or directly from campus. The other are operational people with much more operational experience. So that only comes with experience, right? So this is again what I keep telling students when I go to campuses. Just like I did not know that I would work in an Uber because at that time Uber did not exist or Ola did not exist or Zomato did not exist. You don't know where you'll be working. So it's working for 10 years down the line. So it's very futile to sort of build your entire career on the basis of going to a certain place. A better way to do it is actually build the kind of skill sets that are required in any industry, right? If you have strong operational experience of building a business from scratch, whether that's PE or VC or consulting, there are people always willing to sort of partner with you. So that is a better way to look at it. Sorry, I can't hear you. Um, Sorry, no volume at all at my end.
Sorry.
Can you check
Oh,
your mic?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So one question that comes is that in operations, you really don't use much of academics at all. I mean, after an IIM Ahmedabad dealing with drivers or dealing with customer service executives coming down to your level, because it's a clash of egos and intelligence levels as well. So then,
Yes.
and that a problem. I personally also face that problem quite a lot because sometimes people say, "Oh, he's from IIM Ahmedabad." So they can't see you eye to eye. They look up to you, and hence they'll never be comfortable sharing ideas.
Yeah. So again, I tell you, right, this comes from outside, right? That perception comes from the outside. If you go up thinking that, I'm an IIM grad and this is only what I'm supposed to, that perception comes from outside. I'm telling you very clearly, you need to decide what are the skill sets you need in your life. You need to decide what is the kind of career you want, what are the kind of roles you want. So if you're very clear that you're not a financial genius, but you want a role in PE and VC, or you want to do very strategically important roles, you need to be able to get your hands dirty. Those are the skills you definitely need. You can't just wish them away, right? So you have to be very comfortable knowing these are the skills I need. If I want to be, either this field is not for me, and therefore I can do these kind of things, or I want to do it and I have to be comfortable with doing it. One example for me very early in my career was I always thought I can never sell. I mean, I would never do sales, right?
Hmm.
I would never get into a marketing company, and I would never do sales. The problem is, no matter what role you are in life, you'll always do sales. You'll always be selling something. Whether you're selling a product or an idea or yourself, you're always selling. So you better be comfortable doing sales. So those are some of the conceptions that come from outside, right? Those are, you lose them pretty fast when you realize what your goals are.
Final thoughts. What is your advice to future youngsters eyeing a career as successful as you have?
So, like I said, one of two or three things that have been recurring theme during our talks, right? One is you should very clearly, you should be very clear about the kind, instead of what role you want, you should be very clear about the kind of skill sets you want to build, right? And those should be the skill sets that you know will be required in the world going forward. The world is changing so fast. 30, 40 years down the line, a lot of the manual work we do will probably be done by artificial intelligence, right? So you need to be able to have skills that are relevant and can find you good roles. B is your whether you are from an IMA or not, whether you get to a good institution or not, a brand name only gets you so far. So if you're from a good institute and have a brand name, please realize it's only good enough to open a door. After that, it's up to you to be able to prove yourself. And if you're not from a good institute, please realize you may be starting from 10 meters back in a 100-meter race, but it's a long race and you can still win as long as you know what you want to do, right? If you're very straight in terms of where you want to head. So brand name only matters so far. And last is it's very, very important to sort of enjoy what you do. And I don't mean it in a way, I think a lot of people get it wrong. A lot of people think I need to enjoy what I do, and so if I'm not enjoying, I will quit it. I look at it a little differently, right? I look at it, if you make yourself good at something, there's no way you'll not enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, please don't give up. Give yourself a chance to get better at it. You only enjoy something that you really are good at or you're getting better at, right? So it's like this. When you used to play cricket when you were small, so apne paare mein, if you're playing with peers of your age, you'd really enjoy it. But suddenly I put you in a team where everybody else is 18 and you're 12. You'll probably not enjoy it because you'll not get a batting or a bowling, and you're not going to be able to perform against people 50% better than you. So the idea is either you get to that stage, right, or you play a game that you enjoy. So those are my thoughts.
So thanks a lot, Piyush. So you are a classic example of that thing is that पढ़ोगे लिखोगे बनोगे नवाब खेलोगे कूदोगे बनोगे खराब. You've seen the kharab phase in your life by doing actually only sports and then
Yeah.
studied and worked your way up to a level where youngsters would love.
Yeah, I mean, it's about enjoying yourself, like I said, right? I mean, don't ever think that कि अभी कुछ हो जाएगा तो life set हो जाएगी. It never works that way. Life is never set. So do what you really want to do right now, rather than someone else telling you this is what you should do.
Yeah, and I'm sure people who've actually watched this interview will now follow you on LinkedIn and see your post on the latest one. I think is on artificial intelligence and ML. Your
Yeah.
perception being quite contrary to a lot of people who are just writing it off. So I would
Yeah.
really recommend that people who are watching this actually follow you on LinkedIn. Your insights are really something that I look forward to whenever you post. And I actually
Thank
want to read the write-up on your Lehman brother type days. I mean, that would be quite a revelation. So I look forward to
Done,
that.
done.
Thank you so much, Piyush. Thank you. Bye bye.
Same here. Thanks a lot, Anurag. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.